back here in the backyard again. Got Jack here with me. We're going to talk a little bit about GP. So that's general purpose for you guys that don't know. And what you got to start off with?
So GP was kind of like our first division. Like when we were talking about what we want to be doing with these guns, this was like the first one that we were really interested in hitting. And I think that the way it kind of wound up shaking out kind of proved the point when we first started talking about it of wanting to keep it inside of what a true GP rifle is. You know, I think we weren't quite on the mark when we came out with the 18-inch barrel.
Right.
But I think right now, coming back into it, I am revitalized in my excitement about it, because I think that this is really like the most important or the most relevant division, I guess, you know, for a general user / competitor.
Yeah, and GP is really what sets us apart.
Mm-hmm.
The open, people can run the PRS rig.
Yep.
Practical, pretty much same thing. They can run that same rig. So GP is really what sets us apart, and why I put so much effort into it. I shot GP for basically the whole time. Haven't even shot any of the other divisions yet, just because I wanted to have the feel of that one, and and just kind of roll with GP just because it's there, right?
Yeah.
And it's the one that's in the safe, right? And then with the 18-inch, and we'll just talk the rules here real quick. But with the 18-inch, I think we kind of missed that. Like you said, it was fun, right? Shot the LPR in it, had a really good time, you know, shooting the LPR in it. But it wasn't, you know, shooting it. It wasn't quite exactly what we wanted.
So really, I mean, the biggest rule change when it comes to it is just 16-inch barrel from face and bolt.
Right.
You know, that's it. It encompasses a bunch of guns in there, and it gives you a lot of leeway in like what you're going to do with magazines, and I think that's what makes it interesting. You know, of like, you know, looking at these two setups, you know, which is kind of like the GP category. You know, so you've got a 14.5-inch 5.56 gun, super maneuverable.
Yep.
Really easy to shift position to position. It's fast, it's light, and, you know, it's easy to move around with. And then to this guy, you know, a large frame 16-inch gun, you know, trying to like get the opposite side of that advantage of, you know, getting more ballistic capability, but my expense is going to be mag capacity and just general movement around a stage. You know, especially if we get those like multi-position or multi-port thing, it's going to be easier and faster, obviously, with that. The later recoil, higher mag capacity, because, you know, the most I'm going to be able to get in this gun realistically is going to be 25 rounds.
Right.
You know, what's the most you get in that?
I mean, if I didn't have the Arredondo on there, I could put a D60 in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or something to that effect. You know, the Magpul's got the 40 rounders or whatever they are. And, you know, there's a bunch of options on that 5.56. They're reliable options. Right. There's a bunch of options that are out there that, you know, for both guns. That aren't necessarily as reliable as I'd want for competition use.
I mean, I think you got a big advantage in, you know, like standard AR, because you have so many magazine options right there.
Right.
You know, everything from shorty 20s to 60 drums. You know, I mean, I think if I was shooting that with a 60 drum, I'd probably just drop the bipod completely and just shoot off of that drum. You know, because it's pretty solid.
And that leads me to, I shot the Magpod a lot this match.
Really?
The bipod I only had for like the really long range stages is something that I was gonna be planted. But all the dynamic stages were removing a lot. I shot off the Magpod. And that it didn't save me any time per se. Right. There's not much time, but, you know, going through that stage, it saved me time in other places. Especially with that Cadex bipod on it that doesn't, you know, rapid deploy or rapid fold up. You know, it takes some time to fold that thing up. So those stages where I was going to have to do that, shot out the Magpod. And that's something that really don't have in large frame option.
I mean, I think the other thing you've got is with that concept, you've got more options going, like inside of a stage, you have more options. You know, if you've got to go from a bipod position and then into a small port and you decide to dump that bipod, when you go back either to a prone or something else, you've got another thing to go off of it, you know, because, you know, while I'm not afraid of resting a magazine like a 20 or a 25, it's just like never really in the right position when I've been getting into it, you know, on a larger frame gun. So right now this gun's also set up with an ARCA all around the body. And I think that's one of the things I'm not sure I'm going to stick with. I'm probably going to spend about this dead time, these couple months, figuring out if that makes a difference enough for me to use it. Like I'm not clipping into tripods a lot on the front side.
Right.
Like I could get as much variability in that in the bipod placement, working off just a standard pick. But like this larger surface area is obviously going to be a little bit easier once I get into a bag. But I don't know if that's going to make enough of a difference really than just going with a bare handguard, or just having a piece of ARCA towards the front and rear, or a piece of pick, back and forth.
And that's one thing I ran into, because I have the ARCA on the back, anticipating going into the tripod, but then I've got pick on the front, and I didn't have that option of putting a bipod in the back. So I'm either going to be switching to all pick or all ARCA. Basically it's the same as I have it set up here, a little chunk in the front, a little chunk in the back. Probably be pick would be the easier way to go. But that's just something that, as we set up these guns, as we're doing these things, but then with being able to use a mag pod or some things to that effect, that's doing things with the small frame that I don't have in the large frame.
I think I'm right now about 50-50 if I'm going to throw a dot up here. Like I really do like having that RMR or the DP Pro forward. Like I like that, like driving a target fast, because even on 8X sometimes you find yourself hunting through the scope for targets. So I would like to have that reference. The topper, the higher on elevation turret on this guy might kind of block a little bit. I don't know. I'm probably going to play with it and see where I wind up.
And that's where I'm at with off season. Is same thing. Even on the faster stage, 200 yards, it didn't have a full 8X zoomed in on it. But when we're shooting off the chairs, you can see in the video where I'm hunting for the target. Whereas if I'd had the red dot up, like I do on the other ones, red dot up, at the 12 o'clock, not necessarily for clearing buildings or any of that sort of thing. It's for finding targets quick and dropping in on the scope. That would have saved me some seconds, right? And just kind of transition to scoring on GP, that's some seconds, right? That I could have saved on a couple stages, and that I did save in a couple places with the time plus points. In the overall scoring, it shows that I beat Kane. Right. But in the stage, it shows that Kane beat me. And there's a handful of seconds in there. Basically, it worked out to one target. But over 16 stages, making up 30 seconds in there would have been fairly achievable. With a couple of things, and I made up some time here, lost some time here, but just in that placement. So again, talking about overall, this time with GP in the KGM 16, GP held 3 of the 10 on the top 10 overall.
That's pretty cool.
Usually what we're seeing, and this is how much GP has improved over the past 3 years, usually what we see is GP was the top GP guy was like 50% of the leader. And I just looked at the numbers before we started this, but I think Dan Goodwin shot 84% of Ben, who won the match with the open. And so, I mean, 84% usually we're, with one of the first matches, we were happy that GP came in at 50%. And that's just where we had done that division. And then, over this, especially this past year with the all the matches that we did and all the competition that we did and the new people that are coming in, that really drove up GP. I mean, we're on the cusp. Nobody's done this yet, but we're on the cusp of somebody winning the overall match from GP. Nobody has done that yet. There's been some real good winners, some 14.5s. Eric won a match in 14.5. Been some solid performances, but to have 3 of the top 10 and overall in a 16-stage match for GP, that's pretty solid.
So what do you think it's going to be like? So with the guy that wins, because it's going to happen, right? So a guy is going to win a match with a GP rifle, in GP. Where do you think he's going to sit? Do you think he's going to be like small frame? Do you think it's going to be large frame? Is it going to be 5.56? Is it going to be 6 arc? Where do you think it's going to be?
I think I don't know if it's going to be a small frame or large frame, but it's probably going to be a 6 mil. Just because there's some advantages with that 6 mil bullet. They found out when we talked about wind. We talked about wind a lot. We found out of this match that wind is still a thing, right? You still have to call wind. And you look at the long range stage, and that there was some bad wind calling in GP. But it'd probably be a 6mm bullet. of some sort or another. The 6 ARC guys are really solid. Dan Goodwin had that 6 Creedmoor, and had it rocking. So there were just a couple things, some bad things. I think Dan could have won it. So something in that. Just the 14.5, 5.56, 16-inch, 14.5 isn't that much difference. I just think that there's enough stages that there's a punishment for that. And it's not, I mean, we got some really good shooters, right? So that advantage, down short and that maneuverability doesn't help enough to push that. Now it's fun, right? And you're still competitive, and you're still competitive inside GP. But I don't think that's a win the overall match in combined gun.
When we like start kind of getting into the guns and the divisions and the performance inside of GP, the approach and watching the caliber things change, watching 6 ARC become more competitive, watch it become more reliable, seeing people that are appreciating what the advantage that comes out of that caliber, or many different calibers, honestly, like seeing the advantage in just the 6mm projectiles in general, and the 6.5 projectiles in general. We've seen quite a few guns in 6.5 Creedmoor, through other divisions. Hadn't really seen it much in GP. In the large frames were represented here and there. When you go through the actual division list, when I went through and saw what calibers and what frames people were shooting. Coming back and looking at where that highest amount of competitive level sits, and also taking a real appreciation of the requirements inside of the division or inside of matches, of what type of shooting needs to be done. Where the stages that long range stages are very clearly going to be easier for a guy throwing a larger, heavier projectile with more magnification, as opposed to a short range stage, like Chaos, where just for anybody that doesn't remember, it's pretty much all 200 and 250, for the last Chaos we shot. I think getting on say that a wobbly chair, to try to shoot that target array, a lighter gun is going to be easier. A smaller gun is going to be easier. Is caliber going to matter much? Not really. Because that's an easy stage. You could probably shoot out with 22, as fast as some of the other shooters. It's that. What's that overall give you? What do I want to accept for giving up on a long range, or try to beat with a long range stage? Do I think I'm going to be able to destroy that gun so much easier with a 6.5 or a 6? That's up at that 2,600 feet per second area, as opposed to a 77 grain moving at, what are you getting out of that? Probably
2650. And just kind of playing with it and watching the other dudes, because the way we had the KGM16 is all the people in the championship were in a squad. So I got to watch all the GP shooters shoot everything. And we had some large frames in there, small frames in there. With the recoil management that we're achieving with both open brakes and suppressors and guns and skill set, all that sort of thing, the higher recoil didn't seem to affect those guys. Like I kind of thought that it would, just because we're on multiple targets. So
I think it's measurable. I think
it is measurable.
I think you get in and you can see those gaps. But you're making it up. Like you might not be on that target for the entirety of that recoil event, but you're gonna probably see splash if you got a reactive background. Like the long range stage that we had, out on the KD side with that dirty background, and dirty being it was covered in vines and stuff where you weren't really seeing anything lift out of it. It was just sucking in those smaller bullets. It looked like the guys who were most successful were able to be really sure of their wind on target 1 and 2, and then able to get that array done.
And the guys that had their wind got hits. The guys that didn't have their wind or have a good plan for after the wind, because when I shot that stage, I was like, I'm going to send this in at 1.5. That was my plan. And I was talking to other people, and they had 2.5 and had more barrel than me, and they were doing 2.5. And then a guy that had the same amount of barrel as me showed 4.5. So I went in there. I was like, well, this guy's at 2.5, so I'm going to play in between 2.5 and 4.
Yep.
Because that's what the data's saying. And if I'd have shot it in at 1.5, then I would at least got my first hit. And then, but I was playing in that 2 to 4, so I didn't have a good wind call. Didn't know what my round was doing at distance. Didn't have any kind of splash, and just shot bullets into the berm and didn't have a real good time.
I mean, I think that comes into the, like, how are our shooters communicating with each other about wind? You know, watching a lot of things, you know, people want to reuse that hold information rather than the data that hold came from.
Right.
If somebody came and said that was about 6 miles an hour, would have been a way different thing than telling you it's a 1.5. Like with what? With who, you know, like what's your data say that mile per hour value is? Because then I can run my quick win formula and I can figure out exactly where I should be, and then I would know, okay, I'm between, you know, 6.5 and 7.5 miles an hour. You know, that's really what I should be looking at, not what is that hold, because wind's a constant variable.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's not gravity.
And it changed up. It died off, but I played over in here and missed a lot. But that's the thing with GP, is if you can call wind, you're going to be successful at GP.
Oh yeah. If
you can't call wind, you're not. And it's just that's just the way it is. And it's not about, this is a 14.5.556 gun. I'm anticipating shooting next time with a 14.5 or less. But it's not just, I'm not missing those shots because of this gun.
Yeah.
I'm missing the shots because of the wind, or I'm not getting any data back on it.
Yeah.
The other long range stage that was longer than that one at 856, I happened to catch a little piece of dirt.
Yep.
Got a little dry spot, got a wind hold, and ran the rest of the stage just fine, hunky dory.
Yeah.
I was able to get that information, which with 5.56 going slow, especially, you know, 26, you know, 2650, 77 grain, it's going slow.
Yeah.
It just is. But with that wind, you can be competitive on it. And the other thing with GP is we're doing some stuff with proving grounds. This gun right here, other than this Arca chunk right here, but this gun right here, I could go run on proving grounds. I could get my proving grounds gun that I'm shooting less than 100 and doing stuff and doing proving ground stuff, pistol, rifle, all that fun stuff. But I could turn around, and that's why we're doing this double header thing, is I can turn around, shoot GP, be competitive. Maybe in GP, right? We got to say that important, right? Yes, we talked a little bit about combined, but inside GP was very competitive with 14.5. That's what I shot most of this year. Well, I shot a couple 18s, but I did the most work on 14.5. Ended up 7th in the championship, which isn't bad, isn't good, but it was competitive, right? Yeah. Nobody like walked away from me because I was on a 14.5.
Yeah.
Right. So I can do multiple things with this. I can you know, have the light on it right now. I got it set up for the match, but I can put the light on it, and this is my home defense gun, and then I can shoot it in a proving grounds match, and I can either leave the light on or pop the light off and go shoot a quantified performance match and still have a competitive thing. Now that one might not be as much fun inside something like proving grounds, but I can still do it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it's still entirely achievable with that large frame, and it might be fun. You could, you know, take the suppressor off and turn it into a frag grenade for everybody around you, and, you know, make them, you know, see if you can get some points that way. But, you know, that's what I like about GP is literally it's general purpose. And I think with the recent rule changes, we got it dialed in a bit more, just to be where it is that general purpose rifle. Take it straight out of safe, come to match, not have to buy anything extra. You might buy some stuff after, right? Because I shot the twin matches in July. I shot that with the old Mark 6. And I've had my Mark 6 since 2014. I know it, I understand it, the VDC in it, and I shot on a 14.5, and everything should have been hunky-dory and great, and it wasn't. Yeah. It just wasn't. I did not have a good time. That's probably why I
love the BDC and everything.
Right?
You gotta give them.
But that was something that if I would have just pulled it out of safe, I wouldn't have had as much fun, right? But I wasn't competitive in that match for other reasons, but I still could have been competitive, right? It was terrible. It was terrible. You guys saw it. But I would have bought something different.
Oh yeah.
Right. Just to shoot the QP stuff. But that's not something necessarily that would have foobarred me. It wasn't just that, right?
I mean, I think it's a reinforcement of the things we've been saying for a long time, you know, and just general observations and, you know, how we approach these guns before, because we both did stuff before this,
right?
You know, and you know, like I've been a huge anti-appreciator of BDCs, you know, because just like It's always wrong. It's like, maybe it's good for 300. And honestly, man, it's like, most organizations only expect a guy that has that to be effective to 300.
Right.
You know, like if I can see it, you know, so the magnification on whether it's an ACOG, even if it's only a 3.5 power magnification, it's an advantage. It is a little bit better, you know, but you look at, you know, one, like how limiting it is to not have enough magnification. And then look at how prohibitive it is to really deal inside of the spaces where the BDC isn't right.
Yeah.
And you wind up just recreating your BDC anyway, because nothing lines up. So might as well just start off on something with a solid, you know, mill grid to actually be able to run consistent data or run variable data, because you know it's going to change.
Yep. Even just going 77 grade, right? Because a BDC that's in the Mark 6 is 14.5556, but it's not 77 grade.
Yeah.
Even that little change made that BDC almost, it wasn't worthless. It was still an aiming point.
Yeah,
but
it's a reference.
But it didn't line up on anything. But that's just some of the things that you'll find inside GP.
Yep.
And the GP guys, you know, that one stage, not a lot of them hit that 800 target, but they all hit the 856.
Yep.
They all hit some longer targets. Did really good on, you know, 500 yard. Didn't see any, like, going through the, you know, analyzing the match, didn't see any place where GP completely, other than that one stage, GP got slaughtered compared to everybody else.
I expect GP to do a lot better on the standing, kneeling, sitting stage.
Well, that stage got that stage got harder.
It was sporty, I hear.
It was a lot of fun left that stage with the target change, and it just, that the target that was up. We shot at that target a bunch of times.
Yep.
That target that went up wasn't going to make it the whole match. It just wasn't.
No, exactly.
And that's the piece of steel that went up, and we were like, hey, yeah, that's good. And then went to shoot it, and then no, sir, it was not good.
Yep.
And it was not, but it was not good for everybody.
I mean, I think, you know, looking at that stage, I think it made a lot of people negative, or maybe potential negativity on that stage specifically about shooting these guns from not supported positions. You know, hey, I'm not on a barricade, I'm not on my tripod, I'm not on my bipod, I'm on a tripod. You know, but I view that as a requirement for the use of a rifle that is not a giant heavy rifle. Like, well, I went for a weight savings. What's that weight savings for? Well, it's so I can stand up and use this gun.
Right.
You know, especially inside of general purposes, you know, especially inside of practical, because that's supposed to be a practical rifle.
Yep.
You know, being able to use those guns from positions other than just bipod deployed or over a bag, I believe to be a indicator of skill. And as we are evaluating skills, that is a skill that will continue to be evaluated.
Yep. Yeah, and it was target size and distance, right? Well, really, it was shooter capability. Not to say that our shooters are good or bad.
Yeah.
Our shooters on that target at that range, they didn't like it. When we went over and we shot someplace else, because when we shot the quantifier, nobody was complaining about standing up shooting the 100-yard target, right? And it was just that's just one of the funny things. And I thought the GP was gonna, that in a couple chaos type stages, I thought GP was gonna kind of rise to the top.
Yep.
And the open guys are good. The open guys are really good. The GP guys that are really good, those guys that were in the top 10, they didn't have any problems with, you know, a lot of the stages, or the stage that everybody had problems on, because that standing up stage cleaned everybody's clock.
Oh yeah, that was a rough one. What was it, 5? I think was top.
Yeah, maybe
5. We gave it to him,
right? And that was just, but that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes the wind was a factor, because the wind was blowing you around. There was enough wind that it was blowing you around.
Yep.
That's maybe that heavier gun would have helped out a little bit because you're in a better position. Maybe it didn't. It didn't help anybody.
Yeah.
And that's just that's more on the stage and that day than it is the gun. There was no gun disadvantage or advantage, and there was a 280-yard target.
Yep.
All the guns are perfectly capable of hitting that target.
Yep. And the trigger was, I mean, it was over a mil high.
Right.
It was right, what, about half, 3/4 mil wide.
Yeah. It seemed really big.
Yeah.
It seemed really big when to shoot it.
Yeah.
And then it was not.
Yeah. I mean, seeing shots, you know, like just crushing in at the bottom of the berm, you know, like, you know, on the opposite side, like, man, this looks like a hard stage.
Yep. So. Yeah. And that was a little bit, but again, that wasn't and GP if we would have got some feedback on it, if there had been a dry patch out there that we could have shot at, that was near that range, that one stage wouldn't have beat on GP as bad. You know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, if the wind, if the whatever, right? But you know, overall, like I say, GP was very solid. You know, going through the things, and that's where we're going to be in the future. The KGM was what we want matches to look like. So throughout the future, then you know, if you're shooting this, no, you're not going to win overall. But we don't pay much attention to overall anyway. Just the only reason I brought up overall is because we had some overall finish up there.
People like to look at it. You know, it's that like easy thing of like push the button, see what it is, but you need to get in and actually look at your division because you know, like it's just like going to USPSA match, you know, as a production shooter and being like, oh man, I'm terrible, you know, but hey, no, I actually came out, you know, third in my class. So you know, it's not, you know, we're there's chunks of competitors, you know, it's not an overall.
And everybody's got the same advantage and disadvantage, right? And there's some advantage to going with that 6.5, but there's some disadvantage to it, you know, going in between the large frame, small frame. Optic choice and shooter capability is huge, and that's where we wanted to be. And well, one reliable gun, because the guys that didn't have reliable guns didn't have a good day. The guys that had reliable guns had the day that their skill set was going to allow them to have. And that's where people need to pay the most attention to. Have a gun that runs, have a gun that's zeroed, have data that you know somewhere where your bullet's going to be in flight. Like you need to know those things, and that's not just semi-auto precision shooting. That is going out, that is field shooting, that is going to, going to the range, going to, shoot the Army pop-up qual. Whatever you're doing, you need to know where your bullet is in flight at these various distances. So we're not asking for anything that's crazy.
I mean, I would say if the only thing you're doing is going to your local range and putting 5 rounds somewhere near a target at 50 yards, probably not an adequate level of preparation.
No, I mean, trust me, I tried it.
You know, like, you need you need to get out the day. You know, it's like, you really, I mean, we're asking you to shoot all the same targets that we are for the open. We're asking everybody to do the same thing.
Yeah, there's no stages that are, GP shooting this, but open shooting this. Everybody's going through that same stage. And then, reliable ammo. Tried some new ammo, and I was a little scared going into it because I got the ammo. The ammo actually shipped to Arena. Hadn't even seen the boxes yet, and had good ammo. That as soon as I put in the data, then the data was correct and it trued all the way out. So having those things is more important than many of these other things that they talked about. And GP in particular, you should be able to make a reliable gun.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And that's the other benefit of GP is that I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not doing a whatever Super Wonder 6 in a 28-inch barrel with a weird gas system. And, that sort of thing. I'm just running what I know, and that's why I like GP so much. And I'm going to shoot again next year. I'm probably going to go 14.5, maybe something a little bit shorter, just to prove, just to be the bottom end. Because if I can beat you, my theory is if I can perform well with a shorter barrel than you're allowed, then it's achievable for those other things.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's why we proof all the stages with a 14.5-inch gun with a 1-6. I think you did 1-8 this year. Just to, like, that's the only way that I can ensure that it is achievable. I can see that either it's not that I don't have enough magnification, or that I can't get in the position, or that it's just outside of the capability. Is that target just a little bit too small? Is that hey, does it move enough when I hit it with a 77 grain? Moving at the sound of speed. So the sound of speed. Barely above the speed of sound. And that's a realistic thing that we've got to appreciate. It's why we set those up. It's why we shoot that. And I'll tell you, man, I mean, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was doing 1 for 1 on those targets. Because it's a little projectile with a little bit of magnification, and you're guessing and hoping, and that wind can be pretty nasty.
Well, out there at 856, and this is what the GP, if you're shooting small guns, which you need to account for. Like the 856, my hold was like 11 mils or something like that, 11, 12 mils. With the Steiner, I've got that.
Oh yeah,
I've got plenty.
I was just going to ask about that of like, you know, what you're finding in optic and reticle and stuff.
And so didn't have any problems with that, but on the Mark 6, I would have had problems. I would have had to dial it out all the way and hold in there. Right. And so that's where that BDC, like when you're doing that, when you start getting up into those high mil things, that's where GP, like in a lot of the optics that I've seen that the people are running in GP, they lose it. Because they just don't have the mills for that small target, or that far away target. Not even small. I could put a truck out there, and if you don't have the mills, you're not going to be able to get hits on it. And that's just something to watch as you're setting up a GP rifle. Is that you're going to have enough elevation one way or the other to be able to reach out to 856, 1,000 sometimes. Not saying we're not shooting 1,000 anymore, but so you need to reach out basically, 100 to 1,000 yards. That's basically where the window that you need to be into, and you need to have something to aim with when you get out there.
And that's what I look at mine. Is just pull up my ballistic profile. All right, what's my drop out at 1,000? And I was running a couple of the guns where I would just turn my 0 to 300 so that I had enough hold inside of it to be able to reach out further. Because it's like you're not really gaining a whole lot by just going from 100 to 200 to 300. I mean, most of the guns you're only looking at 300, maybe a 1.7, maybe you're probably gaining less than 2 mils on the bottom end. So if you top out and you don't have enough Christmas tree to work in, you're at a disadvantage. And I found that in a couple optics, and I really like the optics. They were great 3-gun optics. But once it came into this, that's why I went back to the CQB-SS, because it has so much of a tree below it. I have enough to work with inside of that. I think there's a couple interesting optics that are coming up. The Vortex 1 to 10, which came on pretty early. We saw that one. There's that one from EOTech, the Voodoo 1 to 10, which I think is another really promising optic. There's a couple guys shooting those that did well with them. I didn't hear anybody complaining about that optic. I think it's interesting, especially when you're looking at man, when was this optic? I mean, this is what, a 2009, 2010 development,
and it's still solid, right? It's still a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, you liked it, and I shot that optic and basically that gun for 2017 season in the PRS gas gun, and I found out right away that the way that game was set up, that wasn't getting me what I needed, and that's why I went to the 4 to 16, because that's put me inside of that competitive area. But that was really kind of more of a practical precision or open competition, way more than it would be a 16-inch.
GP wouldn't have worked. 2018 is when I shot it. And the LPR with the 4 to 16 on it was barely enough gun. Right. Would have been better off with something in the Creedmoor 260 range. But optic wise, it wasn't a problem. It was there. And then GP is kind of just the opposite. Right. And GP, fits in below that. Doesn't make you buy a bunch of stuff. And that's just a good roll up on GP.
So I'm pretty stoked about this next season with GP. I think we're going to see more competitors coming into that area. I think it's become more contested, much like USPSA, where production was really where the skilled guys were going. Because I remember like shooting production and being like, all right, man, I'm beating this open guy, like I'm doing really good, and then like when I was shooting carry optics, like, man, I just can't let a production shooter beat me, like that'd be embarrassing. So I think we're going to have a more interesting changeover in the landscape of competitors, where they place, and how realistic it's going to be for a GP shooter to win a full match.
And it's going to be cool to see. I think we're going to see it in 23. Schedule's already out. If you're not tracking the schedule's out. And I think
that's a schedule of confirmed points matches so far.
Confirmed points matches so far. There might be some other things. Quantico's, we're still waiting on Quantico's schedule. We're waiting on a couple more matches that we're going to get up in there. But that's not counting the non-points matches. So some of these local places are getting, 5 and 6 stage matches that aren't for points. But good practice matches to get in there before you're going 4 points.
And for guys that are like living in those areas where these matches are coming on new, especially like I'm looking like Pennsylvania, where we don't really have a lot of shooters or a big support structure there. Like if you live in that area and you know how to spot, it would help these matches gain ground and become more permanent if people will participate from an RO and a spotter standpoint, because every match needs that. To run well, you really need every stage should be run by somebody that sits on that stage, that knows what that stage is, and keeps everything equal and even. Otherwise, you wind up with problems.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things we're continuing to work on is ROs and getting ROs and competitors out to those, because the competitors pay the bills, right? But the ROs make it work.
Oh yeah.
So that's we're still working on ROs. So if you're not shooting a match, again, we're only asking you to shoot 4 days before the finale, 4 single days before the finale. There's 14 events on the schedule this year, 15 with the finale.
Yep.
Not asking you to shoot all those, but what you could do, you could go RO.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good chance to see what everybody else is doing. It's a good chance to, kind of roll that in. Good chance to, be at the match and still be in there, but not be paying that money to shoot.
Oh yeah. I mean, so, it's like when I RO, like I love to show up and I'll bring my gun with me. And, I can grab my data. I can work my things between squads.
Yep.
Like there's always a gap. There's always time.
Yep.
So using that time for yourself to do something, I mean, as long as, everybody agrees that that's okay.
Right. Yep.
Like that's not only you giving back, but you can also pull something for yourself and from it.
Yep.
So, it works both ways if you're smart about it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good way. But I think we'll wrap this up. And thanks everybody. Thanks for paying attention. And we'll see you pretty soon.
Yep. See you next year.